Hey guys, June here, and in this video we're going to take another look at e-dating with a little bit more of a focus on the relationships themselves. To get us started, I'm sure the first thing you think of when I say the word relationships is relationships of the romantic type, a girlfriend, a husband, or something of that sort. However, the actual definition encompasses quite a bit more relationships than that. For example, you may have a relationship with a business partner. You also have a relationship with your family and friends, and even you and I have a relationship in terms of viewer and content creator. The reason this distinction is important is because a good portion of the community that we would refer to as e-daters is not actually serious people pursuing romantic relationships. A community has developed that seems to use the playful satire of e-dating culture as a means of social cohesion where maybe the individuals in the community wouldn't have anything in common absent that. Psychologically speaking, there's not too much interesting going on there that separates these individuals from any standard social group. But I wanted to get that out of the way ahead of time because a lot of people do the e-dating type behavior simply for the banter. This leaves us free to talk about the people who are looking for more legitimate relationships where there's a lot more fun things going on. To get that discussion started, we're going to take a look at Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love, which serves as a nice, albeit oversimplified model of looking at romantic relationships. Sternberg classified several different types of love that he characterized by the interrelationship of three common core elements. The category that he defined as the interrelationship between intimacy and commitment, but absent passion, he called companionate love. This type of relationship seems to be the foundation behind e-dating behavior, and this makes perfect sense given some relatively recent research into the psychology behind online communications. John Suhler is a professor of psychology at Rider University, and in 2004 he published in the Journal of Cyberpsychology and Behavior a paper identifying what he called the online disinhibition effect. He identified 6 attributes of online interactions and noticed that this influenced people's behavior in one of 2 ways. In one variety, these effects allowed people to cast off common social mores and exhibit antisocial behavior, which was often harmful. We will definitely explore this further in a future video where I look at things like trolling and predatory PvP behavior. In the other variety, he noticed individuals becoming much more free with information and less guarded about their emotions and secrets, likely owing to the fact that they got a sense of safety from being anonymous. He called this the benign disinhibition effect, as contrasted with the slightly more harmful variation of the antisocial behavior we talked about previously, and it's my conjecture that this effect is what's responsible for an elevated level of emotional intimacy in internet relationships. In fact, I'm sure many of us are personally acquainted with this phenomenon in the sense that we feel more comfortable releasing what might be sensitive information about ourselves online since we're completely absent any potential consequences of that information being released. This likely means that at least from the narrow perspective of emotional intimacy, an internet relationship might be more appealing than a face-to-face relationship. It may be even more pronounced in individuals with social anxiety. To branch out from this and take a look at the second effect that I think really strongly influences these behaviors, I want you to ask yourself a question. Have you ever, for example, heard a new song on the radio that you enjoyed and then at a later date looked up the band or saw them performing on television or something and saw the singer and thought to yourself, "You look absolutely nothing like I thought you would"? This is a pretty common experience for most people, but when you think about it, there's really no reason that we should have any possible perception of what an individual might look like based on just hearing their voice. This comes from some of our brain's core hardware. In order to conceptualize another person, we have to have a relatively complete idea of that individual, and if we're being deprived of some information, like for example what a person looks like, we quite literally make things up to fill in the gaps without thinking about it. Naturally, when we're talking about an online relationship rather than a face-to-face relationship, there's going to be a fundamental loss of information. We can, of course, learn about the individual through conversation. Maybe, for example, the person is interested in music or plays an instrument. They may even share photographs with us so that we have a rough idea what they look like, though there is still a loss of information here since the person is likely going to be sharing with you a photograph that they believe they look nice in. They're not going to send you a photograph of them on the couch with the flu eating a piece of cold pizza in their sweatpants. Because of this fundamental loss of information, we're never able to assemble a complete realistic picture of a person, and so we're naturally going to fill in the gaps. The trouble with this is that when we do fill in those gaps, our brain is naturally going to bias things in the direction of that which we find desirable. In this sense, we establish a hypothetical person that is much closer to what we would consider an ideal individual than what the actual individual on the other side of our communication is. We can see some of the consequences of this in instances where people who established a long-term relationship online meet up to attempt a relationship in face-to-face format and find that they're actually far less compatible than they were in their online relationship. Obviously, that's not to say that an online relationship can't lead to a functional face-to-face relationship, but this is just a general trend. Another common consequence of this deprivation of information is that it leaves you very open to catfishing, where an individual might pose as someone that they're not in order to seduce you into a relationship for the sake of making financial gain off you. In closing, I've noticed that a lot of people have this opinion of the e-dating culture in that the people who are doing this in a serious sense are just kind of pathetic people who aren't able to establish relationships in real life. In truth, most of the people who are doing this seriously also have actual, functional, face-to-face relationships, and they find the appeal in this is mostly about the emotional catharsis that they get from being able to freely express their emotions without any kind of potential consequences. As usual, this is definitely an oversimplification. We're only looking at a few of what are definitely thousands of interactive effects, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.